Hello, everybody. It's Recotopia episode 131, which sounds
Woohoo!
like a lot. I'm Chris Atkinson, joined by Aaron Dicer.
Heidily ho, Notorious.
There you go. Yes, today's big recommend is Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious from 1946. Once again, would like to welcome chat who have come out here to watch us talk about movies on a Tuesday. Aaron, would you like to start us off with our small recommends?
Sure thing, Big Daddy. I have no idea why that just happened, and I apologize to everyone involved. Yeah, I will leave the suspense in, or the chat in suspense no longer. The question was asked, and now it will be answered. Yes, I am small recommending Beetlejuice, which I got a chance to see recently and really enjoyed. I think much of this will depend on your feelings about Tim Burton in general. You know, if you like the way he takes, the macabre and turns it into, whimsy, then I think you're going to really love this. If you love the original Beetlejuice, this is more of the same. And I think it's a real trick to take a property like this for 40 years. Is it almost 4 decades later?
Almost, yeah. It's like 36.
I mean, yep. and to bring it back with the original people like this, I mean, all those that were available, and then add some new elements to it, but make it kind of feel like the same thing is going on. Keaton is so much fun in this role. I have so much fun every time he's on screen. It just works, and I laughed a lot and had a good time. And sometimes that's why you go to the movies. So yeah,
that's
good
true.
stuff.
I watched this a couple of days ago.
Oh, nice.
Yep, and I pretty much enjoyed myself.
Okay,
there are several moments in this that I'm like, that's truly inspired. I love what they did with this. This is like classic Tim Burton. Tim Burton feels like he's getting back to his old roots on this, and it doesn't feel like a total cash grab, even though to be cynical, it is to start with.
Almost by definition, right? Like, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the two things actually about this movie that really drag it down for me, maybe 3 things. One is the relationship Jenna Ortega has with the guy that she meets in this movie. I feel like that was very underdeveloped, and they don't treat it with any respect whatsoever. The Monica Bellucci character, who I really like, but I feel like they just left her kind of hanging too in this. And then there is that interminable Manchester Park song going on for like 5 minutes, and it doesn't need to. And so like those were the things that dragged it down for me. But there are enough in here that if you didn't small recommend it, I might have small recommended it.
Okay.
That's where we're at on this one. I don't like it as much as you did, but I did enjoy. There were like some very inspired things in this.
Yeah, there's only one of the points you make I would slightly disagree with, which is I thought the song Going On Forever was glorious. I thought it was kind of one of those things where it just kept getting funnier and funnier to me. And I guess I was just in. But I can see, especially if you're like, okay, enough, it's going to go on for a lot longer. And so that okay enough probably does elevate quite a bit during that, but yeah, I agree with the other things. I think there is an underdevelopment of the antagonists in this movie in general, and maybe at the end of the day, Tim Burton just wasn't interested in that. He was just more interested in more of the plot mechanics rather than the antagonist protagonist dynamic. I don't know, but
second all-time domestic box office opening weekend since it came out. That's pretty amazing. So
yeah, it is.
All right, well, over the weekend I had another movie night with my friends, and it was my turn to pick. So I picked 2 movies. One of them I can recommend, one I don't think I can. I always pick, I will tell you that the one I can't recommend is Life Force. I can't in good conscience recommend that movie. but I do recommend it on the down low a little bit if you want to see something just, out there. But anyway, I was in the mood for some 80s schlock. And so I picked two movies I'd never seen before. One was Life Force. The other one was 1987's The Hidden, which stars Kyle MacLachlan as this FBI agent who acts a bit off. He's a little bit weird. Why is that?
Kyle MacLachlan acts a little bit weird.
No, what the hell, man? This is so beyond type. Anyway, so I was there's a guy at the beginning of this movie who's going on a crime spree. He's driving the sports car while playing dirty, dirty rock music at the same time, and he's killing people, all this stuff. And then like he gets into a wreck. He goes to a hospital, and then Kyle MacLachlan shows up to the police station, and the main policeman here, the main detective here, is played by Michael Nouri. Kyle MacLachlan's like, I'm looking for this guy, and I need to know where he is. And he's like, well, he's at the hospital. Well, the guy who's in the hospital has a thing inside of him that he delivers to his roommate at the hospital, and now the roommate is the guy has this black alien creature inside of him, and he gets out of the hospital and he starts going on a crime spree. So it's very hard to figure out alien is at any time or whatever. So it's basically just sort of Kyle MacLachlan and Michael Nouri chasing after whoever this alien is. It kind of reminded me of Fallen, the later Fallen that came out, where the demon is going to different people and everything. But this one, it has so many fun 80s schlock elements to it. You're gonna laugh throughout this movie. It's kind of serious, but not really, never really is serious and everything. And it's a very simple story, very fun to watch. I highly recommend The Hidden if you haven't heard of it before.
I saw this as a surprise screening at the Austin Film Festival that I went to a few years ago. That's a Fantastic Fest. They do like surprise screenings or whatever. And is it Jack Shoulder maybe, or something like that? Yep. He was there and afterwards sat for like some questions and told stories. And he was what I remember. First of all, the movie is wild and worth a watch because it's just really fun to watch. But I remember Jack Shoulder being one of those guys who's like not in the industry necessarily anymore. And so he like doesn't care. And he's just telling stories out of school. It was just kind of one of those fun things. But yeah, this is like an old genre, kind of sci-fi classic. So yeah, that's fun.
There's nothing better than finding someone who don't give a fuck no more, because they will tell you the stories. They're ready to spill the tea, man. Because they don't have to worry about they're gonna get, what are you gonna do to my career now? I don't have one anyway.
Yeah, exactly. My second small recommend, I've been wanting to get around to seeing this. It is an adaptation of a Broadway musical that they filmed kind of, I call Hamilton style. I know others have done it, where it's like they're filming the Broadway show, but they're also doing extra shots where, they're doing, cameras that are on stage and, those kind of things. But this is Sarah Bareilles in Waitress the Musical. First I'll just say, if you don't like musicals, just stay away. You're not going to enjoy this. It is a very, very typical Broadway musical, people breaking out in Broadway musical numbers, kind of thing. I love that stuff. So that stuff is a bonus for me. The real draw here, and the reason I make it a small recommend, is I think Sarah Bareilles is one of the most talented vocalists living right now. I think she's incredible. And she does some vocal things in some of these songs that just blew me away. There's one of these songs, I forget what it's called, I apologize, but I think it's had a little bit more of mainstream exposure. She's messy, but she's kind is one of the lyrics. Anyways, when that popped on, I was like, I kind of know this song already, even though I've never, seen this musical. As far as the story goes, pretty basic, like in a bad marriage, looking for something different kind of storyline that you've seen before, but it's also putting an emphasis on not sugarcoating that. So in other words, when a character makes a bad choice, let's say to have an affair or something, the musical doesn't sugarcoat that. It makes a statement about everyone in this being human and making human choices, and that those have positive and negative consequences, and have positive and negative moral implications for the characters. I found it really interesting and worth a watch, and yeah, I would recommend it. I think it's available VOD if you want to check it out. Waitress the Musical.
Have you ever seen the movie that this is based on?
I haven't, but now I kind of want to, because I'm sure I'm sure it's a very similar storyline, and I think Sarah Bareilles saw the movie and was inspired by it enough that she was like, I like the messiness of this. I want to create a musical about it.
Well, the writer of Waitress, Adrienne Shelley, was an actress she wrote Waitress, and I believe she was in the movie as well. But she tragically got killed by a worker in her building one day or something like that. I don't know if she got to see the premiere of this movie when it came out, but this really interests me now that I realize that it's based on that. And I want to see what they've done with the material to make it, turn it into a musical and everything. So I'm very interested in this. The movie is good too. It's got Nathan Fillion in it. It's
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
I will add that to my watch list.
Yeah. So it had been a while since I had seen this movie. It's it's like when there's movies that are so good and you haven't seen them in decades. You can count decades probably since you've seen them. It's like, maybe it's time to watch this. After all, I do have a Blu-ray of it, and it is sitting right there for me to watch. Why can't I just go ahead and watch it? That movie was Thief from 1981, Michael Mann. In probably, I don't know, this might be his first big feature. I think I looked it up, and it seemed like he had just done a lot of shorts and maybe some like very unknown type of movies before that or whatever. But this is so good. Michael Mann may be one of the people like who was responsible for how the 80s entertainment went. And Tangerine Dream, the composer in this, also hugely influential to how the 80s, like Thief, and even in 1981, you're like, whoa, it's amazing how 80s this movie is, and we barely gotten into the 80s at this point. But this is about James Caan, who is the titular thief in the movie. He is a jewel thief. We see him at the very beginning stealing a bunch of jewels, and then he wants to sell them. He's supposed to get $185,000 off of the jewels that he got. His like middleman wants to do something. Wants to get James Caan into like something on the street. Like if you invest basically with these other bad guys, you can make a lot more money. And James Caan is not about that. He's the lone man in this. Well, the guy he sends off to sell the stuff gets killed, and then he goes off to confront the people who killed that guy and stole his money. And then he eventually gets the money back from this group of gangsters led by Robert Prosky. And Robert Prosky says he wants James Caan to work for him. Hey, look, how much money can we make together? It'll be so good and everything. And James Caan's like, no, I don't want to do that. But James Caan's got a life he wants to live, man. He wants to see this girl that he sees at this diner, played by Tuesday Weld. He wants to marry her. He's got a postcard, or like a collage postcard thing that shows his entire life. And the only thing that's missing is a wife and kids. And then he can just go ahead and walk off into the sunset. But he didn't have enough money. He finally has to sort of break some of his rules to finally get enough money to support a wife and a kid and all that. So he breaks down and he wants to work for Robert Prosky. And of course, Robert Prosky isn't just like hey, do a job or two or whatever, and then you're okay. He's not that type of dude. So there's like a conflict here between not only Prosky but the cops and everything. And this, but the of any heist film, the biggest thrills that you're going to get out of it is seeing a professional be a professional, and like figuring out, okay, we know all of this. We know what we're going to do with this problem when we rob this place. These 4 alarms. Well, there's a 5th alarm that he needs to figure out. So like he needs to figure out, how do we get past this 5th alarm? And then the safe itself is built of some sort of material that they've never seen before. And how do we get into the safe? So it's stuff like that that really gets the blood pumping. And like when they finally start doing the heist and everything, it's really cool. Anyway, this is a great movie that I was finally glad to revisit after all this time.
Watched this for the first time within the last couple years and loved it. Like it's just a great front to back, keep your attention, tell a simple story kind of movie. And I don't mean that the tension in the narrative isn't complex, because it does get complex. I just mean, I think now we're used to when's the big story twist coming, and that was a tricky thing the story did there. And I think this movie is a testament to, just tell a really good story really well and make the drama character based and let us be invested in the human beings. And man, we're along for the ride. And I thought this was really, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good recommend.
Yeah. All right, on to our big recommend, which is Notorious from 1946. And Aaron, this is yours, so take it away.
Will do. Notorious, a 1946 film noir spy thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It was his 36th movie overall and his 10th film since he abandoned England to make films in sunny Southern California. After a minute of opening credits, with possibly the absolutely most complex, fully spelled out way to indicate time, date, and place on the screen, we follow some reporters to their place just outside of a district courtroom. In court, John Huberman is convicted of treason and sentenced to prison for 20 years. The reporters then accost the criminal's daughter with just enough exposition to get us some foundational knowledge. We cut to a party where there's dancing and drinking in the back of a shadowed figure who has crashed this party. After some veiled conversation relating the art of fishing to sexual conquest, we lift the veil on the guest, who is none other than Hitchcock's favorite actor, Part 1, the pre-Jimmy days, Cary Grant, playing Devlin, a playboy who's about to take a drunk drive with Hitchcock's favorite actress, Part 1, the pre-Grace days, Ingrid Bergman. After a policeman rightfully stops them, he then unrightfully lets them go after Cary Grant shows off some ID. She gets angry that he's apparently a cop too, and he promptly either knocks her out or watches her pass out. I'm not quite sure, but then he goes home and puts her to bed, but not in the way we were all probably thinking the evening was going. Once she comes to, he tells her that he wants her to help by going to spy in Brazil for the police. He appeals to her patriotism, but she denies being a patriot before he reveals he brought receipts, and they spin at about 45 rotations per minute, playing a conversation proving that she's loved America enough not to go along with her German father. She finally agrees to go with this handsome new agent. On the plane ride over to Rio, we casually find out that her dad popped a poison pill and died the previous day. They then arrive in Rio as confirmed by Jesus hanging out just outside her plane window, as he is wont to do. After some more crackling dialogue started at a cafe and ended on a mountain they apparently climbed somehow, we get the sense that she just wants to be trusted and he may be falling for her, despite his distrust of her body count. But their love is confirmed as he forcefully smashes his face against hers. A quick trip to a boardroom confirms that the guys in suits have some plans. Dev and Alicia then retired to the beautiful Decatur hotel room for some of the sexiest icebox chicken conversation that side of the Hays Code. Unfortunately, the finger-licking good experience is cut short as Devlin has to go get his assignment, which turns out to be a honeypot mission for his new gal. They want her to flirt her way into a guy named Sebastian's home to find out what they're up to. Devlin is immediately possessive about his one-day unconsummated crush, but goes back and lets her know the gig anyway. She throws a few jabs and fishes for some compliments, but Cary Grant continues to play Devlin's advocate extremely coldly so that she can commit to the job. Then it's off to woo Sebastian. One horse ride later and the job is done. Sebastian, played by Claude Rains, is on the hook. A dinner date proves that Alicia is great at this, and a second date is set for a dinner party at his home where she is supposed to memorize everyone's names and nationalities without asking any questions. She noticed that one of them feels a little bit nervous about a bottle of wine, and we notice that Emile then is offered a ride home, which is probably a sign that he's never actually making it home. Later at the races, Alicia meets with Devlin, and after saying she's done the thing she was sent there to do, Devlin gets cold again. They're then interrupted by Sebastian, who's apparently been spying on them, watching them across the track, and needs her to go back to his house and prove that she loves him more. Alicia now calls a meeting because Sebastian has proposed marriage, and Devlin gives the emotionally loaded green light. After the honeymoon, Alicia quickly discovers that the wine cellar door is locked and becomes suspicious. She asks for her keys, but the key to the wine cellar is the only one she isn't given. Devlin then suggests that, well, maybe they throw a party to get that key and have him invited under the cover of proving she isn't interested. He agrees and steals it. He agrees, and then she steals it with some sneaky sleight of hand and foot. The party begins with a stunning zoom from all the way up the stairs to a tight close-up of Alicia's hand holding the key like 50 feet away. She hands the key off to Devlin before they interrupt a man grabbing a glass of champagne, probably in celebration of that show-off stair zoom shot that he just pulled off. After leaving Sebastian under the auspices of asking the orchestra to play some more Brazilian music, she takes Devlin to the wine cellar to snoop around. His clumsiness knocks over a wine bottle that is apparently full of some black sand, soon to be known to the world as uranium. And we watch the champagne bottles disappear one by one upstairs. We know that they're about to get caught. They do somehow manage to get it all cleaned up and just outside the door, just in time before being caught, and then trying to sell a story that he pushed himself on her and then she pushed him away and convinced him it was over. This ruse works until Sebastian realizes that his key was missing. After it magically reappears in the morning, he does some hunting, and as proof as to the importance and value of chronologically organizing your physical media, wine bottles, he finds glass shards that prove shenanigans happened in the wine cellar. Sebastian immediately says, "I'm telling my mom," and she says she knew all along, but that they can take care of this internally without letting anyone else know. Alicia now starts to not feel so well, and after an intense meeting where a guest is very dramatically warned not to accidentally drink her coffee, she puts two and two together and realizes she's being poisoned. She collapses and is taken to her room by the Nazi mother-son duo who promised to get a doctor to treat her, but we know she's likely not long for this world. Meanwhile, Devlin is starting to think that, well, maybe she's not actually just a raging alcoholic and needs to get over there to see what's going on. He heads to the mansion where he finds his way up to her room and realizes he now basically needs to carry her down that same set of stairs that Hitchcock so expertly showed us the distance of earlier. They're intercepted by Sebastian, fresh from a Nazi boys' night, and his mom, who find them in the peculiar situation now of not wanting to give anything away for their own safety with the other Nazi guys in the house. This gets Devlin and Alicia to the door, but as Sebastian begs to be taken away with them, Devlin says, "Not my circus, not my monkeys," and we follow Sebastian back inside his home to what will surely be a welcoming group of friends, supportive of him in his trauma and there to help in any way possible. And that is Notorious. Chris, what did you think this time through?
First off, a shout out to Nick, who says the mom felt like they were gaslighting her, so she decided to give Bergman vertigo. There you go.
Nice.
All right. So I love this movie, of course. This is a great one. And Hitchcock, there's very few that I've ever watched that I'm like, that wasn't very good. Or, there's probably a ton that I have not seen that are like, oh yeah, that's the reason why you never hear about that one. But this is just this good stuff. So I love the part where Devlin learns about Alicia's mission and he gives all the reasons why she shouldn't do it without giving away that he's in love with her to his boss and everything. And so he's giving every reason basically why she shouldn't, while not, being able to say, I'm in love with her. I don't want her to go with some other dude. And then he tells Alicia about her assignment, and he has to withhold all those reasons he gave to his boss to pretend he's just because he's just being a professional, while also hoping she turns down the assignment on her own and not give away that he's in love with her. So that I love that dynamic that happens within 5 to 10 minutes of each other, him having to be one way with his boss and then being another way with her later. Devlin and Alicia's relationship in the hands of Grant and Bergman is, of course, very believable. So I love that no matter how professional they think they're being, it's palpable to others how much they love each other. And she has to lie so many times to Sebastian, and that's the reason why he ramps up this marriage right off the bat, because he never really believes it the entire time, but he wants to so badly that he's like, let's ramp up the stakes, and then she can prove it to me by marrying me after a week and everything like that. And his delusion is a believable character flaw for this movie, which, a lot of times we see, in modern day movies, it feels like the villain's flaw is just, oh, he's dumb, or he's megalomaniacal, and he can't see the things that are going to trip him up and everything like that. I love that there's an actual reason here. I don't know how prevalent spy movies were by the time 1946 rolls around, so I don't know how prevalent scenes were where the spy has to do something that is perceived as negative just so they can keep their cover. And then when Devlin goes in to kiss Alicia down at the wine cellar and everything, he's like, he wants Sebastian to know. He wants Sebastian to say, oh, they were just down here, fooling around or whatever. And I love that scene, especially when you consider the year that how many scenes like that had happened at this point. I would assume not many, but maybe that was old hat even back in 1946 for all I know. I don't know. And I like how Sebastian isn't dumb, but his judgment is clouded by his obsession. So when he finally sets his obsession aside, the scenes where he's figuring out things on his own are great. And he's finding the difference between the years on the bottles, finding the broken bottle underneath the rack, placing his keys on the table that don't have the cellar key on it, and then checking to see if it's on the ring the next day. Love all that stuff. We talked a lot about the Hays Code last week, and to get a sort of a refresher on this, it was sort of a morals code. No sex, nudity, strong language, bad guy had to pay for the crimes in the end, all these different things. And in this movie, they're skirting Hays Code stuff left and right, especially during the kissing scene, which a lot of people talk about. You could not kiss on screen for longer than 3 seconds. That was a part of the Hays Code. So what does Hitchcock do? He puts them in a situation where for a minute and a half, they kiss each other for about 3 seconds, and then they start talking about things. But the camera stays in close, and they stay in close. And then they kiss each other for another 3 seconds, and then they talk about stuff again. And Hitchcock, this is the reason why we sort of love Hitchcock, because he was always like, okay, tell me what the rules are. All right, now I'm going to kind of toe the line, and I'm actually going to step on the line, and let's see what happens with this. And so that scene is masterful in so many ways, and it's still... This is another thing about the Hays Code. A lot of things came off better because of it, because there's something they can't do in these movies, and they're still kind of getting away with it. But there's like a rule. There's like something like, ooh, thrilling. They're getting away with something, but they're also showing restraint. So at the same time, that scene with Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman where they're kissing each other is like hot, right? It's just super hot in the end. Then the other little Hays Code shenanigans they do in this that I love is the way she reveals that she's had sex with Sebastian. You can add Alex to my list of playmates. And it's like, I imagine Hays Code enforcers were sitting there going, God, that's so blatant. But they don't come out and say it. So what are we going to do? Like, they wanted to. They wanted to do something about it, and they just couldn't. So I love that too. Okay, so one thing I don't like about this movie, and it's minor in the grand scheme of things, but I kind of hate the villains, and I don't mean just because they're bad guys. We have one guy who unnecessarily freaks out at a bottle of wine, and then he ends up getting killed over it. And I understand why they kill him, but it's like, do you really think that they're serving uranium at the dinner? Is that why you're so upset about this? You really think that you didn't know that there were some bottles that actually have wine in them that they serve occasionally? How else do you think they put the uranium in there? They dumping the wine out and everything. I don't know what that's all about. And then the ending is a little weak because of this too, because they suspect Sebastian of doing something they need to kill him over because his wife is ill and it doesn't seem believable. That's what it comes down to. It just doesn't. I wish that it was a little bit more than that. And so like that's one thing about this. The movie doesn't need to have like hardcore strong villains to work because it's not really about that. But at the same time, like the danger that they sort of represent doesn't make much sense. Like they must be the most intuitive villains ever created if they just believe, oh, she's ill and because of these circumstances it must mean that she knows about the plot that they're doing or whatever. And by the way, just don't have uranium in your wine cellar. What is that all about anyway? That's my ultimate beef with that part of the movie. And one last thing. I know you're going to say something about that, but one last thing. And I love you mentioned the great camera shot from the stairwell. The other shot I love is when she wakes up after being drunk and Cary Grant is walking over to her and the camera is up and turns and everything. I love that one too. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll also throw in, since we're talking great camera shots, the dual focus shot with the coffee cup and her, even though it looks like she's a distance from the cup. They actually created a forced perspective giant coffee cup, so both things could be in focus. Hitchcock. I just love his problem solving, right? Like he's a great problem solver, and it goes back to the Hays Code thing. Like, here's what I want to do, I will find a way to do it. Yeah, I guess I'll start by just quickly responding to the villain problem, which I don't think you're completely off on. I think your first point for me is the strongest, which is, that guy's quite an idiot to be in this inner circle of, these guys. Like he's clearly just supposed to be the incompetent one that they need to get rid of. And because he doesn't understand how to, calmly approach any questions he might have or not freak out at things. That doesn't kind of fall in line with the rest of them. I do think the movie does lay the groundwork that these guys know they're being closed in on, and they're trying to figure out how. Now, putting that together with it being, Sebastian's fault because his wife was an agent, I guess that's up for grabs if it doesn't work or it does. I think there's enough for them to be suspicious. My feeling is that they're about to have a talk and it's about to get really obvious. Because towards the end of the movie, from both sides, from both the agent side and their side, there are separate conversations about, it feels like something's coming to a head, like they're on to us, or, this will be over tomorrow, I think they say on the agent's, side. So we were clearly, at the end of, whatever this exploration is.
But yeah,
that is happening.
I see that, but like she's sick and they need to take her to the hospital, and that's how they're gonna figure everything out from that. I don't know. I don't
think it's the illness. I just think it's Devlin and her leaving. What
do they figure out from Devlin and her leaving? What does that mean?
Well, just Devlin? I don't know, but I would assume that the idea is like, who is this obvious American guy coming in to take your wife away, and why did you let him leave with her? I don't know. There's some questions to be asked, I guess, but but I think it's valid. I don't think it's completely
all the way out to make it make sense. Okay,
yes,
gotcha.
Yeah, there we go. Some other things that I want to talk about. This part, the female lead in this was originally a sex worker, which I think is another interesting part of Hitchcock taking the story and trying to adapt it into the Hays Code, because really one of the overarching themes in this movie is about his distrust of her because of her promiscuous past. The idea is you've been with it's a body count movie, right? You've been with so many people that, am I supposed to trust you now that you'll only be with me or whatever? And the way, like the Playmate thing, the way those things are phrased, the idea that this movie is about your past and how you reckon with that and can you change, is really expertly done when you think of the original had that as a sex worker and making that obvious. The uranium stuff blows my mind in 1946, like how far ahead of the curve that was. In fact, they almost banned this movie because uranium wasn't well known to be a radioactive material or used in the process.
Right.
And there was somebody who was in on like atom bomb conversations that they talked to, and like, I can't tell you how to make an atomic bomb, but I can tell you uranium is, part of the process. And so they were like, okay, we'll do uranium. I thought that was wild in 1946.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Love so much the dialogue in this, much of which was improvised, by the way. That balcony stuff was improvised. But there's lines that stood out to me this time that I'd never heard before. One is when they're leaving the party early on in the movie, and she says, "My car's outside," and his response is naturally, as like, where else would it be?
Yep.
It's so well delivered. I loved that. Same scene. He says, "Don't you need a coat?" And she says, "You'll do." And it's amazing. And then there are other times where it's just these asides that I don't know. I think Hitch had a really interesting sense of humor. It's very British, very dry a lot of times, but there's this moment where they're talking just as an aside about going to the movies, and somebody says, Eric loves to go to the movies to cry. Very sentimental, that Eric. So I just thought that was funny. Dry your eyes, baby. It's out of character was another line that stood out to me this time. It's a great delivery there. I think those comments about my wife were uncalled for is such an interesting, because it's all under the surface, but then it's like everybody knows, what's being talked about. I thought that was good. I think there's an interesting thing this movie I noticed this time is doing with distance shots from the reverse. So when we first start, or even just shots from the reverse, because when we first start the courtroom, we're outside the courtroom looking through at the back of this person that's being put away, and we never see them. Then we cut to the party, and again, Cary Grant is shadowed. It's just his back we see forever. And then the final shot of the movie is Claude Rains. Again, it's his courtroom. It's a different kind of courtroom, but it's from a distance from the back. And there's also an interesting thing, like he has to ascend the stairs to hell, basically, after they descended the stairs to heaven. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of this interesting, I'm probably adding a lot of that, but I just, when I watch Hitchcock movies, he plays with these motifs in such interesting ways that I think it allows you to kind of see some deep things there. The thing Hitchcock has with moms in his movie, it's never ending. Like Psycho's probably the biggest example, of his mom issues. But they're here too. This, Nazi villain guy is just completely mom dominated for this movie. So I found that interesting as well. One final thing, this is just kind of a final thought that I thought was interesting. At the beginning, they cut to it's either the party or after that, cutting to them getting together to talk about the plan. But there's a guy that looks a lot like Hitchcock that just walks across the street, and I swear Hitchcock is doing a fake out cameo at that point, which I just think is so interesting that he's like playing with this thing, that early on.
He's
Because
the one at the party getting the drinks, and then he walks off the screen, right?
Yeah, he grabs a glass of champagne right before they come in. But yeah, I always have so much fun with this movie. I just think it's so well written, well performed, and these they were his two go-tos before Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. Ingrid Bergman was in 2 of his movies. Cary Grant was in several of his movies, and in fact, he and Ingrid famously got along so well that his wife was uncomfortable with it. She was not happy that they kept doing movies together because there was something there that he let her add stuff to scenes, which famously Hitchcock never did. So. That's kind of an interesting thing, but yeah. Anyways, love this movie.
I do think Hitchcock fell in love with his stars.
I think so too.
I don't know if anything actually happened, but Ingrid Bergman is, of course, an all-timer for me. Grace Kelly is like an incredible all-timer. You cannot tear your eyes away from Grace Kelly. And of course he notoriously had a thing for blondes all the way throughout. So he's like, okay, I'm not doing Ingrid Bergman anymore. We're doing Grace Kelly. Oh, I can't do Grace Kelly anymore. Let's do Tippi Hedren. So it's just he kept on doing that over and over. But yeah, that is an interesting thing. I did not realize that she was allowed to do all of those type of things on his movies.
Yeah, there's some trivia about the scene, the wine bottle scene. There's some trivia about the wine bottle scene that she actually changed some of the lines and asked for some different things, and he went along with it, which is wild because again, his reputation is famously nothing changes. He was a perfectionist about this is what the camera sees, this is how it sees it. Here, what needs to happen. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll go on to the super secret double feature. I went through a couple on this one, and I even made our resident graphics designer here, Aaron, go through a whole thing for one and then changed it. But the first one I thought of as an easy one was North by Northwest, because there's a lot of similarities in that movie. Where you have someone who is, basically decorated as an amateur spy in the movie. Cary Grant is mistaken for a spy in North by Northwest, and of course he has a love affair with someone who is on the bad side or whatever, and these type of things, or all these type of elements happen in this. The next one I thought about was Jackie Brown, but I was unsure, and this is the one that I had him make a graphic for at first. Jackie Brown, I wasn't sure if we had used Jackie Brown as a super secret double feature before. And in fact, I suspect that we've used it at least once, maybe twice before. And I was like, man, I don't know. I like Jackie Brown as a double feature, but I ultimately have decided that the super secret double feature of this movie should be Moulin Rouge, for a lot of the romantic parts of this. The main thing about Moulin Rouge is that Nicole Kidman is playing this dancer and this courtesan, and she's supposed to go to the guy who can pay the most, basically. And so Ewan McGregor shows up in her life, and she mistakes him for this wealthy person, and they fall in love. And before she finds out that he's not the wealthy person, and then the wealthy person comes into her life, and she's supposed to be with him, but she's fallen in love with Ewan McGregor. And if you want to talk about a whole thing made up for a love affair, they make up an entire musical so that they can have this love affair in Moulin Rouge. And so she's seeing him secretly, but then pretending to be in love with the Richard Roxburgh character all the way, the Duke, all the way through. that movie, and I feel like the parallels are pretty good on Moulin Rouge. Now, stylistically, Notorious and Moulin Rouge could not be farther apart. Moulin Rouge is one of those, it's a Baz Luhrmann movie, so it's like all over the place, hyper edited, super colorful, blah, blah, blah. And it does not, like watching those two movies back to back, you cannot get bigger whiplash. But I think story wise, they're very, very close.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great choice. There's a real similar feel to the character Nicole Kidman is playing, and the character Ingrid Bergman is playing. You know, there's a demureness to it despite its sensuality. You know, and that's not easy to pull off. So
yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be my turn for next week's homework. And again, sort of kind of a culmination of things after I watched these two 80s movies over the weekend. And this podcast has been recommending John Carpenter movies quite a bit. So we're going to do They Live from 1988. That is going to be our big recommend. Aaron, have you ever seen They Live?
I have, and rewatched it recently because it'd been a while. So I'm excited to dig in. This movie it's wild. Yeah,
it is wild. It's super wild. I can't wait to get into this one. I've seen this movie multiple times, and I'm glad to sort of like introduce this to our audience who have not seen it before. And really, honestly, John Carpenter's nearly entire filmography could get onto this program, especially from the years of 1974 all the way to 1990 or so. So looking forward to getting into that again. All right, looks like we have some time for some questions. Let's see what we got in the old question bag. What film detail did it take you 5 or more viewings to notice / comprehend?
I love the 5 or more viewings. Like that's like a specific. I'm like, do I have to go back and like count villain in my mind?
It's like the villain who's like, you have 72 hours. Why is it 72 hours? Anyway.
I know I have had watched Bad Times at the El Royale at least 5 times and was still picking up new stuff. And it was kind of one of those progressive things where I would find a theme or something that Drew Goddard was playing with, and then the next time I watch it, I realize how it's there the whole time. One of the most recent is the idea of 50-50 choices in that movie, or 50-50 splits, which is clearly there with the location of the hotel being, on a dividing line. The hotel is divided, who's on which side, all those kind of things. But then there's also these subtle things that happen, through the whole movie. There's a coin flip at the beginning. At the end, Lewis Pullman's face, when we learn about his past and all that and what he's doing at the end, is almost exactly half covered, just covered in blood, and half clean and pristine. And it's this duality that he's been playing with the entire movie, and that character represents with, this timid guy that's been timid through the whole movie that you find out the end is more than you realized, and is, half a killer and half an angel. I don't know. That movie, every time I watch it, I find new stuff in it. I think it's really, really smart. So
I've seen this movie a couple of times. I know I haven't seen it as much as you and Jeremy have seen it. I know Jeremy's probably watched this 20 times by now. He probably watches it every day since he's been on vacation. But that's great. I haven't noticed that on my viewings. I didn't notice the 50-50 things yet. But that's an awesome thing to catch. It also reminds me of the where he's like the guy was lying in bed with a wolf. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't not sexual.
Yes. Yep.
Mine is I feel like I'm shameful on this one because it was a Knives Out, and it's how they keep calling Ana de Armas's character either Colombian or Mexican, or they change the nationality every single time. I didn't notice it the first time, didn't notice it the second time, didn't notice it the third time, and then watched it. I think I got the Blu-ray and decided to watch it, and I was like, oh, they keep changing the nationalities and it's perfectly in line with what he's doing with that movie too. I felt really bad that I never caught that. And since we're almost out of the original we've got a whole brand new set of questions, but since we're close to the end of that original set that Jeremy answered, go ahead and give Jeremy's answer. He says he never understood why Trinity denies Cypher's phone and tells Morpheus they'll be back to track it. He said, I thought for a long time it was indicating that she knew he had turned evil, but it's actually just that his phone was the last one used to track her way back in the opening scene of the movie. They tracked it once, so she knows they can do it again. And that's an interesting one for sure. Going over to the chat, let's see. Slab says Nega Scott in Scott Pilgrim. The reason he was so nice to regular Scott was because he was the inverse of regular Scott, who was a dick. Yeah, that's a really good one, actually, to think about, because we always look at our main character as the good guy, even though, God, clearly Scott is a dick in that movie. He so much is. Let's see. Any more? Flyboy says, I don't know if it was 5 viewings, but it did take a few times through to see Travolta walking past Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer at the beginning of Pulp Fiction. Yeah. Josh says the Twin Pine / Lone Pine Mall joke in Back to the Future took me until like 1990 to notice. And I watched that movie millions of times as a kid, and I did not notice that for the longest time as well. Castroff says, I recently watched Prince of Egypt and realized that there are scenes besides the hieroglyph dream that are rendered partially in 3D. Okay, I guess we got time for one more. Who is the director that is best at acting? They have to be a director first and most, so no Rob Reiner or Ben Stiller.
I'm going to go with Scorsese here. I like when he shows up and stuff, and Quiz Show is the one that I would go to first. I think he's great in that role. I think he's perfect as the executive, and there's something about the way he talks and the way he speaks that is distinctive and interesting to me. So I would go with Scorsese, despite the actual answer probably being Werner Herzog. That's probably the actual answer.
He is. Yeah. I mean, I think he actually had people. I think he was an in-demand actor. In fact, that's how good he was. I like Scorsese too. He's terrifying in Taxi Driver as well, and then the brief scene that he's in, that's a terrifying person. That movie does such a good job of not only are the people that De Niro runs into dangerous, but everybody out there is dangerous, and somebody in the back of your cab could just as easily be the guy that you need to. I don't know. It's just it's kind of a fascinating performance. I think Spike Lee fits this bill. Now, you don't see much of Spike Lee outside of his own movies, but I grew up not even knowing that he was Lars Blackman for the longest time when he was on those Nike commercials and everything. And that was a character, I think, from School Days, that he later translated into those Michael Jordan commercials. But I love him in Do the Right Thing. I think he's great in that. And of course, he's saying his own dialogue, so therefore he knows exactly how that should go and how he wants to present it. But I really loved him in that. So I thought he was really good. And I'm probably missing somebody who's a really great actor who's we know as a director. But the real answer is Werner Herzog, like you said. So there you go. Over on the chat, Slab mentions Werner Herzog. Flyboy says Gary Marshall, so funny in Soap Dish. Now that's an interesting one. Is Gary Marshall, would Gary Marshall be in that Ben Stiller, like the part of the question where they said they can't be an actor first or whatever? Because I feel like Gary Marshall was an actor first. Wasn't he on Happy Days? I think that was like one of the things that he started off, like one of the big things he was in, and he was an actor for the most part, and then started directing. But
same reason you couldn't say Ron Howard, like the exact same reason.
Yeah, it's the exact same reason. Yeah. Slab says Kevin Smith is great at being silent. Is that acting? I think he does pretty well in those things, actually. I think the being silent part is just, is a funny shtick thing. But then when he actually has to talk in those things, I thought he was great in those anyways. He's pretty funny. I think he's even in stuff like that, the Die Hard, the Die Hard movie, the Die Hard 4, which I can't think of subtitle.
Live free or die hard.
Live free or die hard. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. So I mean, he's decent. Let's see. Don't someone mentions Tyler Perry? Probably not. I don't know. Tyler Perry. Yeah, exactly. I was just about to get to that. Slab says Tyler Perry is good in non-Tyler Perry movies. Yeah, I agree. I think he's great in these other movies that he pops up in. And not to say, I mean, he's pretty good as Medea. I mean, I don't think those movies are great, but I think he's good as that character. Yes, and Slab does say Live Free or Die Hard on the Kevin Smith thing. And who's great in Gone Girl? I can't remember who's great in Gone Girl.
Is Tyler Perry in Gone Girl?
Oh, and Tyler Perry was in Gone Girl. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Once again, thank you, chat, for coming out and watching us talk about movies today. And next week is They Live from 1988, the John Carpenter film. Can't wait till we talk about that one. And that's going to do it for this time. We'll see you.
See you guys.
Bye.